Hello, Facebook and YouTube Live, True Inner Work community. I just got back from my weekly volunteering at the Soup Kitchen. I do noon to 2 o'clock every Wednesday. We also did a fine dining cafe for the third time every 2 months last night. And that was really incredible. And so I'm shooting this kind of series of videos on lessons from the Soup Kitchen. And what I've learned there, lots of different things, and today about remembering people's names, not just why that's important, but how to do it, right? Because there's one thing I hear a lot of people say, it's, I'm not good at remembering people's names. And we'll actually defend that position. If we'll give suggestions, or it's like, no, it's harder for me for some reason. And I'm going to just cling to that story to free myself from taking responsibility for caring enough to remember someone's name. Because the reality is, if we cared enough and we really wanted to, we could remember people's names. We try and remember people's names, especially if they're important to us. But if we're trying to make someone feel important, like at the Soup Kitchen, where it's not really about you anymore, it's about, hey, the one way that I can show this person I care is by acknowledging them, right? I can acknowledge them, their existence, and that I see them here and that I value them just by saying their name. And that's an incredible, incredible gift to be able to give someone, is I remember who you are. There's this sense of belonging, right? That comes, and fitting in, that comes from being acknowledged. It's recognized. We're looking for meaning and fulfillment in life, and it's right in front of us, but no one is truly acknowledging that presence, that existence, that worthiness that is inherently valuable just by being here, right? Outside of things that we need to do to achieve or to look good, all of these very superficial, ego-based reality uh, constructs that stop us from connecting from the level of human being. And so one trick that someone has been told me is, writing the name on their forehead. And I definitely try and repeat the name after I hear it, and then have some kind of meaningful conversation with the person so that we can remember their name based on a story. Sometimes I'll even remember the story, but not the name, right? And so just because I don't remember the name doesn't mean I need to repeat the story in my head that, oh, look, there's another reference experience that tells me I'm bad at names. No, I've been bad at names in the past, remembering names in the past, and I'm not good at remembering them yet, but I'm going to. Why? Because I'm making an effort towards that. And oftentimes when we say we're not good at remembering names, it's really me just saying, I'm choosing not to put into an effort into doing this. And that's totally okay to do that. Just don't say that you can't, like you have some limited learning capacity, and we pigeonhole ourselves into this fixed mindset. There's a great TED talk on fixed mindset versus growth mindset by Cheryl Dweck. I think it's Cheryl Dweck. And she has a book called Mindset as well, which is really insightful in how the way that we learn growing up, a lot of times in our elementary school education, we learn to have a fixed mindset, and that children with a growth mindset see the world very differently, and how we can actually just train that. So a lot of us who are repeating those types of perpetuating self-sabotaging stories in our head, if we can become aware of the mindset that we have, recognize that there's a way to make a change, and then do that, we can dramatically improve the quality of our life and the connection, meaning, and fulfillment that we experience by creating that change. And so what we come up against next is a lot of people will defend their current reality because they say they want to be different, but they also choose to stay stuck in the familiar, right? Because the familiar is comfortable, and we've mistaken comfort for happiness. And we actually fear the change that we say we want. And that's part of why we beat ourselves up a bit too, right? It's like, I say I'm wanting these things, but I'm not taking action on what's really true for me, or what I'm really passionate about. And it's the things that will actually bring us the meaning and fulfillment and feeling of being fully alive that we want. But because we're afraid to take the leap into the unknown and let go of that certain place, it creates a lot of suffering and depression for us, right? And depression is this really great emotional signal to move in another direction, to take action on something. There's another great TED talk on how spiritual awakening and depression are two sides of the same coin. And the hand that is pulling you into the darkness is the same hand that welcomes you into the light. I just love that. So it's a beautiful story about a woman who um, ends up adopting a child. And so definitely check that out if you're interested. So remembering names is a lot to teach us about the power of acknowledgement and presence, the power of curiosity, the power of caring, right? It's really, do I care enough? What do I want? I love when people remember my name, or maybe I don't. And maybe that's not your motivation, right? Just finding what that motivation is so that we can begin to acknowledge ourselves more as human beings and step out of the old patterns that are cutting the very connection and love that we want off. And that's the tricky bit there, is we're holding ourselves hostage from the things that we want. And that's kind of a realization for some people of like, wow, I've really been limiting myself from what I want. If I do what I want, then I have to forgive myself for not already having done that, right? I spent 30 years creating this problem for myself. And now I have this simple solution of taking action on what really matters to me. And that's what near-death experiences do for people, right? They snap them into the present moment enough to realize that, oh my gosh, I've been taking my life for granted. I have running water and electricity and all these things, and I've been not taking responsibility for creating a life that actually means something to me, that I can be proud of when I die, where I won't have any regrets. Because really, I'm scared. I'm scared of living a life that's true for me, that feels good for me, that feels passionate for me, because I'm not sure how I'm going to support myself as I make that transition in life, right? That is a predicament that a lot of people stay stuck in, trying to figure it out. And we feel like we're trying to get somewhere, but we're really running on a hamster wheel, because what you're trying to figure out is a way to avoid the pain of making that change. And there's no way to avoid that effort or that pain. And we're looking for the easiest way, rather than the easiest way is actually saying, screw it, I'm not going to try and figure it out. I'm just going to take action on what I'm being called to do, right? Which is from that intuition, that gut space, that heart space, that whatever term you use for taking action from what you need to do feel place. And I want to get this book Radical Honesty and read you a really great passage if I can find it from that. Radical Honesty, Brad Blanton. That's the first time I've actually read his name. I just got engrossed in this book. So let me read. After enough practice at role-playing and idealism, our whole way of orienting ourselves in the world depends on principles of orientation, which are made of the mind, and he explains how that occurs, rather than on the ability to respond as needed based on what we perceive. This moralism, the web of entrapment of human aliveness, is a crippling disease. We all have it. It is terminal. It cannot be cured. It's a hell of a lot worse than herpes. It is as deadly as AIDS. It is in our schools. It is in our minds. It is in the bloodstream of our culture. It is in this book. That seems like catastrophizing, doesn't it? But that's taken out of context about, obviously everything that precedes that. So please take it in stride. The main point is that we get trained as a child to avoid pain and to try and recreate pleasurable experiences. And a lot of us never grow up from that. And we learn to lie in order to cover up the fact that that's all we're doing. And this is an unconscious process for most people. and it continues into adulthood until finally we're in enough pain that it has us move in a new direction of inspiration, of life's call, heart's call, your true heart's desire, your vocation, your calling, whatever that is for you, something that just feels good rather than doing what you think you should do, the rules and guidelines that education and society and your parents have laid out for you. This is a huge shift for people that's happening right now. And it takes a lot of permission within yourself to free yourselves from those old limitations, because we have a tendency to cling to them or attach to them or hang on to the things that aren't serving us. They're actually hurting us, because everything that helped me be successful or get me here today or to help me survive today is now what's holding me back from my next level of evolution. And so there's this letting go process and stepping into, I don't know what this is, but I really hope that I can trust the universe to provide for me, to hold me as I let go of what I've been called to let go of, like a snake shedding its skin, right? And when we try and hold on to our skin, we create disease within ourselves. And that shows up in diseases like depression and anxiety and all of these different diseases that Gabor Mate talks about in his book, When the Body Says No, The Hidden Cost of Stress. So it's to recognize when we are in transition, in that cocoon phase of our journey, of our human evolution, similar to seed to sprout, all the pain that it needs to go through, right? Cracking open, like that snake shedding its skin, like that caterpillar to a butterfly. We're not saying that's exactly what it is, but metaphors are what it's like, right? It's helping describe part of what's going on to help give us some peace as that happens. Because I find that there's a lot of resistance within people during these periods of transformation. And that's when a lot of people come and receive coaching with me, right? We need that support from an expert who understands what's going on and can help you see yourself and pull that truth out of you during that transition. And what we end up finding out is, even when we're on the other side of that one layer of skin, that this is what's going to be happening for our entire life, is this constant evolution. And if we learn to let go, if we learn to practice acceptance and forgiveness and love, and give ourselves permission to slow down and have peace and time for ourselves without beating ourselves up, right? All of this internal resistance, hatred, anger, sadness, guilt, shame, jealousy that we get sucked into, if we begin to understand that this is a natural part of our human evolution, we can begin to detach from that and relieve ourselves from a lot of self-created suffering. And it's hard for people to hear that. Like, I don't want to know that I'm like creating my own suffering, right? And what really is suffering anyways? Well, a lot of people are complaining that their life isn't how they want it to be, or know it could be, right? And it's hard to understand what I need to take action on within that, within life's mass of information and external demands, right? Out of this biological impulse to, have sex, to eat, this drive from society to work 9 to 5 and support yourself and get married and have kids and buy a house. And this is like expected of you, right? And that's not what a lot of people are called to take action on in their life. They want to engage in a more minimalistic lifestyle. They want to have less and experience more, right? Deep connection with themselves, with nature, with other people, with something that actually matters, with contributing themselves, their authentic selves to something. That's what we want, right? That's what we want. And that's what's very possible for ourselves if we would all take action on that together. And all of this stemmed from remembering someone's name and just caring about that and not making an excuse for not caring, right? Let's just own that and say, I don't care enough about remembering your name to make the effort to do so. And this is when it's going beyond ourselves, right? Lessons from the Soup Kitchen, going beyond ourselves, that all of the greats like Tony Robbins, it's like, don't want what you want, give what you want. Wayne Dyer, like, lose yourself in the service of others. There's a lot that can be learned from getting outside of ourselves. On one hand, we have some people hiding their worthiness issues through helping people too much. And then on the other hand, we have a group of some people who are like depressed or lost and just simply need to offer more of themselves to the world and stop this self-pity, right? There's all of these different dynamics and different situations, and we can't just speak to one of them. We have to be able to speak to each individual in their own experience and say, what is that for you? And how can we help everyone get more of what they want? Because that is also possible, right? But no one's talking about these things and no one's choosing to care. We're waiting for some other leader to take the action to do so, rather than saying, hey, like, what's the part that I can play here? Or what's the part that I already am playing? How can I give myself and others more peace and joy in their life? And I see that in living with a gentleman who has dementia, right? Not about me, right? Infinite patience comes from that. Infinite awareness comes from that. That's why Mo Monday's story on Yesterday Doesn't Matter, I talked about this gentleman who has dementia who I live with. In exchange for rent, I help take care of him. I talk about him as being my Zen master teacher, right? Such great presence and curiosity we can give as gifts to people. But because we're so caught up in our own thought processes, just like right now, a lot of times people will be listening to these videos and you're really listening more to what you're thinking than these words. And that's incredible, right? Because we don't see the intangible reality of where our attention is. And we don't realize how much of our attention is on an unconscious thought process that is a story I keep repeating to myself and living out again and again. And if we take responsibility for that story, to speak it, to stand in it in whatever way that looks like for us, which is radical honesty, standing in truth, right? Which is Brene Brown talking about owning your stories of vulnerability. All these different types of people talking about this thing now, right? How we move through, not around, all of these hard emotions that we have been avoiding. We're avoiding taking responsibility for those things because it's uncomfortable, right? And we feel like we're going to lose control if I let myself be angry. And so we're trying to be good people while at the same time numbing our emotions. As Brene Brown says, if we numb one emotion, we numb them all. And that's why we see a lot of people living these mediocre, average, conformist lifestyles, because I've numbed myself out from experiencing the full aliveness of life. And so I end up as a victim of my experience rather than a creator of my reality. And you can check out some of my other videos on the 4 stages of consciousness, where I talk more about that shift from to me to by me to through me, and through me to as me. I wish I knew the names so I could point the way. Unfortunately, you'll have to search for what resonates with you, what titles. Subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already, and check out my website. I'm going to be putting together a servers program at the soup kitchen I work at. So maybe I'll do another lesson from the soup kitchen on that a little later in the lessons I learned there. But for today, it's just like Ellen DeGeneres says, right? Be kind to one another. And one of the ways that we can show kindness is by remembering people's names and putting aside, I'm not good at that, to maybe I could be. Maybe I'm not good yet. It's the smallest things that make the biggest difference. I've seen that in working at the soup kitchen every Wednesday. I've seen that. And I didn't know volunteering would be like this, right? That's why I'm here reporting on it. How fulfilling it can be, and not getting stuck on, well, I'm not sure what I'd like, right? It's like, come on, take action. What are we waiting for? We're waiting for a near death experience to start doing something that matters. It's like, don't lie to me and say leaving some kind of legacy is not semi important to you, if not for your children, someone else, whatever that motivation is, your grandkids. And to not downplay what a small contribution can be. And we choose to not take action on a lot of those instances because we discount our own value because we have worthiness issues. We're afraid of how much effort it's going to take. We make all of these really interesting, clever excuses to not take action on what really matters. Because we lie to ourselves, right? Right there, Radical Honesty. That is a fantastic book that I've just begun to dive into. And how the truth can set us free. And it's sometimes hard to stand in the truth and not be a victim or not be, not stand out too much. To just own it from an authentic place. It takes courage to do that. That's for sure. It takes courage to do that. So I hope you remember someone's name today and keep trying, keep experimenting different strategies, fun ways, creative ways that you could remember people's names. Play a game. Make it more about them and not about you. Pretend they're a 5-year-old kid. Pretend they're an elderly person with dementia. Whatever you need to do to make it matter to you to remember someone's name today or this week or this month. One more name in a month, right? It doesn't have to be, I have to be good instantly. It can take time. It could take the rest of your life. It wouldn't matter how long it takes. Just a small example of what we can do to begin to create the world that we all want, but continually avoid taking responsibility for creating. Thank you so much for listening. Deep respect. I say my truth here in hopes that it will inspire you to share yours, similar or different. Probably especially if different, because it helps expand me. So hard to put ourselves aside to fully see someone else's perspective and validate that and say that makes sense. It's not real for me, but I see that it's true for you. Frig, that is hard. You got to step outside of yourself for that, right? And by validating your experience, I'm not invalidating mine, but can I begin to try and see through your eyes, to walk in your shoes? That is a very healthy human practice, and that's what circling and authentic relating are all about. So if you have any questions on any of this, if any personal stories to share, I'd love if you send me a personal message, commented below, subscribed on YouTube, checked out my website, whatever. I have a book coming out, The Power of Permission, giving yourself the freedom to be authentically you, that's coming out. So stay tuned for that as well. Sign up on my email list, and I super look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for listening.